today I am very excited because in the kitchen, we're kind of gonna make this kitchen feel kind of sort of like a coffee shop vibe because we're making a coffee shop staple. Now, is there anything better than dunking a crunchy little biscotti into your fave coffee or tea beverage? I don't think so, right? It's so good, it's so tasty, it's crunchy, it's delicious, it's perfect for dunking. So I wanna show you how to make my chocolate almond biscotti. It's super delish, like classic flavor combination. I, like many teenage girls, when I was about like 17, 16, went through a biscotti phase. It was pretty serious, yeah. I made a lot of biscotti. It was like my go-to cookie. They last a really long time because they are a quite dry cookie, which sounds bad, but that's what makes them perfect for dunking. They last a long time on your counter or in your pantry, but they never really lasted that long in my house, and I'm not gonna lie, because this is so, so tasty. So we're gonna get to work on that batter. Now, we have got about a half a cup, not about, we've got exactly half a cup, 1 stick of butter in here that I've just beaten up. That's at room temperature, and I want it at unsalted butter. Sorry, guys. What's going on with my brain today? Somebody needs a coffee. Luckily, that's coming up later. All right, so I have got that nice and beaten up. And I'm using unsalted butter, but all you have is salted butter. That will work perfectly fine too. Now into there, I'm gonna go in with my sugar. Just classic sugar. It's a very basic kind of cookie dough recipe. I'm going in with about 3/4 cup of white sugar. You wanna use white sugar for biscotti as opposed to brown sugar. Brown sugar adds like a really nice chew that you want in something like a chocolate chip cookie. But in a biscotti where you want that crunch, white sugar all the way. It's gonna give you that crispiness. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. So I'm just gonna beat that into my butter. And because this is like a denser cookie, you don't really need to worry about creaminess. Now, creaming has nothing to do with the actual like dairy product cream. Basically, creaming means beating a little bit of air into your butter and sugar mixture that helps that sugar dissolve a little bit, and it gives you like a fluffier and resulting baked good. But for this, honestly, until it's mixed up, you're good to go. Don't worry about creaming. Now, into there, I'm gonna add in some eggs. I need 2 eggs. But one thing I will say is anytime I'm adding eggs into anything that is fatty, like butter or something like oil, you do wanna add them in one at a time. Eggs are mostly water, and just like if you're making a salad dressing, water obviously doesn't really like mixing in with oils and fats. So by doing it one at a time, it almost acts to emulsify it so it doesn't split apart, which is perfect. All right, so 1 goes in, 2nd egg is going in as well. I'm very much in a baking mood. I've been baking like every other night in my house. It's very exciting. My husband gets 1, and then I bring the rest into work because, you know, it's weird to bake and have like 8 cakes at home. But you bring it into work, everybody eats a cake, and you're good to go. All right, so give that a good beat together. And then we're gonna start flavoring this. Now, since I'm doing a chocolate almond biscotti, I'm gonna use a little bit of almond extract, but just like with any sort of baked good, you always wanna add in a little bit of vanilla as well. Vanilla extract gives you that classic kind of baked good flavor. So I'm going in with a teaspoon of vanilla. Now, if you have pure vanilla extract, that's usually what I buy, but if you just have the artificial, honestly, you're not gonna notice a difference. Save the extra bucks, you're good to go. But for almond extract, this one comes in those like littler bottles. It's way less expensive than vanilla extract, and it has that kind of amaretto-y, like liquor-y, almondy smell to it. Really nice, but it is strong. So you want 1 teaspoon. I'm gonna free pour because I'm a professional, but you should probably measure it, because it is quite powerful. If you pour too much in, it's gonna taste like a cocktail, which is not necessarily what you want. All right, give that a little bit of a beat together just to bring everything in. And immediately you smell that almond extract. Almond extract kind of tastes, if you've ever had an almond croissant before, that frangipani fudginess in the middle, that's what it tastes like. It's absolutely delish. So that's it for the wet ingredients. We're good. Kind of like classic cookie dough sort of vibes. Now we're gonna move on to the dry ingredients. So I've got a separate bowl here, and into there I'm gonna go in with 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I've done biscotti before where I sub out a little bit of this flour for some cocoa powder for a bit of a chocolatey vibe. You can feel free to do that. I would sub out that last 1/4 cup and do cocoa. It is a little trickier to see when it's baked though, because obviously something with cocoa in it, already brown. Hard to see that beautiful golden brown color. So if you're making it for the first time, go with just a regular kind of vanilla-y dough. 2 1/4 cups. Now for a little bit of rising and lift, I'm going in with 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. There's nothing acidic in this recipe, so baking powder is perfect. You don't wanna use baking soda, because baking soda needs something acidic to kind of start that rising process. Baking powder actually uses heat. It can use a little bit of acidity, but the heat is what makes this rise, so that's gonna be perfect. Now into there as well, season that up with about 3/4 of a teaspoon-ish of some salt. I'm using kosher salt. If you're using sea salt, feel free, you can pull that back to maybe half a teaspoon if you're feeling it. Give that a good whisk together. And now we're gonna add in our mix-ins. If you wanted to here, you could add in dried cranberries, you could add in dried cherries, that would be amazing. But we're just doing chocolate almond, because I love chocolate almond. Who doesn't? It's a hit. So we're going in with 150 grams of chopped up dark chocolate. You could use chocolate chips if you want, but chopped chocolate's really nice. It melts a little bit better, it looks a little bit more rustic, really tasty. The good thing also about this recipe is that's basically 1.5 chocolate bars. So I don't know what happened to the other half of that chocolate bar. No one has to know. It's all good. Now, for the almonds, I don't chop those. I leave those whole. I like them nice and whole. So I'm going in with about 3/4 of a cup of almonds. That's gonna be beautiful. If you have roasted almonds, go for it. I usually go unsalted here, just because we've got that salt already in. Perfect. Now I'm just gonna give that a mix to combine, and just to coat that chocolate and those almonds. That's gonna help it not sink in this batter. Perfect. Now, to bring this all together, obviously we add the dry into the wet. That's a way easier way to mix something. If you did it the opposite way, you'd develop a little bit too much gluten. And I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a beat. You could do this by hand as well, using just like a spatula or something. But this just comes together into a really nice cookie dough. You smell the almond extract as it's moving around. It's a little dusty right now, but as soon as it starts coming together and holding into a nice dough, you can kind of almost hear the mixture or the mixer sound change. Already that looks perfect. Okay, I'm gonna finish it by hand. Now this makes enough for about 30 biscotti, but what you wanna do now is you wanna set this aside and let it hydrate for about half an hour in the fridge. That's also gonna firm this up a little bit. Now this is gonna make enough for 2 loaves. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge, and luckily I've got some already hanging out in there, always a delight. Perfect. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and I got that squash to use up. You know when you go in your fridge and you're like, oops. Oops, okay, well, perfect, okay. So we've got this dough here looking absolutely beautiful. This is about half of that amount of dough. So this is enough for 1 log of biscotti. The recipe makes enough for 2, which is perfect. But this is what we wanna do. The thing about biscotti is you actually bake it twice, not just once. That's the difference between most other cookies. So this is nice and hydrated. It's been in there for about, I'd say, half an hour, but you can also put it in there for up to 2 days. So if you wanna make that in advance, go for it. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick this up, and it's gonna kind of feel like we're in kindergarten again, playing with a little bit of, modeling clay. You just wanna make it into a nice log. So basically, grab that dough and just form it into a log that's about 3 inches by 8 inches. Just onto a nice parchment-lined baking sheet. If it's a little bit sticky, feel free to just moisten your hands with some tap water. That'll work perfectly. Mine is nice and perfect. Ugh. I would do this a lot neater if y'all weren't here, but toot sweet, get going, Mary Berg. Okay. So make it into a nice log, again, about 3 inches by 8 inches, and then you wanna pop this into a 350-degree oven. This bakes for a strangely long time. It goes in for about 25 to 30 minutes, because you wanna start drying that out. Now, for any eagle-eyed fans, that doesn't look like biscotti, does it? No. We're gonna bake it in this loaf form. Now, does this look like biscotti? No. But the trick with biscotti is you actually bake it twice. Once as this loaf, then we're gonna chop it up and then bake it again. So this is looking absolutely beautiful. It's cooled for about, I'd say, 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm just gonna transfer that onto my cutting board. Now, if you want to here, this loaf makes about 15-ish biscotti. You can cut them straight, just like, kind of like do. But why would you do that? If you cut them on the angle, you get a bigger cookie. So that's one of the things I like to do. Now, you can use a serrated knife or a chef's knife. I feel like I'm gonna go chef's knife today. These are what I call chef snacks, these little corners. But basically just slice these up. If they fall apart a little, that's okay. The first ones might, but they're gonna come together beautifully. Just give it a slice into perfect little cookies. Like, look at that. That looks kind of like a biscotti, am I right? Absolutely perfect. Now I'm gonna transfer those back onto that parchment-lined sheet pan. So just keep on slicing as you will. You wanna get about 15. If you want them a little bit thicker, you do you. They'll just take a little bit longer to kind of dry out in the oven. And it's funny, anytime I talk about a cookie, I don't think I've ever talked about a cookie being dry before, but you actually want it to be on the drier side. That's what makes it so it can absorb that beautiful amount of coffee when you give it a little dunk. It's so tasty and delicious. And since I used whole almonds, you get those beautiful little cut bits of the almonds throughout every single little biscotti. So you see that crunch. There's gonna be tons of texture. And again, if you wanna switch up the flavor, Put in some dried cherries, some dried cranberries. You could do any sort of nut you're feeling. You can leave them plain. You could do white chocolate. That would be absolutely beautiful. But yeah, just keep slicing these, laying them out onto that. And you want to lay them like cut side up or down, glass half full, half empty situation, because that's going to allow a little bit of that heat contact from that pan just to hit onto those, giving you a little bit more of that toasty flavor, which is totally delicious. So now I'm going to pop these back into the oven. I've dropped the temperature down to 325 this time because I do want them to just dry out that little bit. Those need about 15 minutes. If you want an even golden brown color, give them a flip, let them go for another 5 minutes, and then you're gonna end up with little tiny crunchy cookies that are so good. Like, so crispy, so crunchy. My favorite thing about these cookies is since we've double baked them and gotten a good amount of that moisture out of there, these will last in a cookie jar in your pantry for a good, like, I'd say month. That is if you don't eat them all first. That's why, you know when you go to a coffee shop and they have that jar up on the top shelf and you're like, how long have those been there for? It's actually totally fine because they are a drier cookie, so they last a lot longer. They're more shelf stable. Because they're dry, they give that delicious crunch and crisp. You can wait for these to cool a little bit if you're feeling it, or you can just pick them up, pop them onto a plate next to your favorite coffee, your favorite tea. And I don't know about you, but that looks like kind of the perfect little pick-me-up. Very excited. Okay, which one am I gonna go? I'm taking this little guy, and again, like I said, these little, what I call chef snacks, you can eat them as is. They're a little bit chewier, really, really tasty. But this guy, with this little cup of coffee, whoo, guys, I'm very excited about this. And again, perfect for dunking. Just dunk her in. You get that little bit of that coffee soaking through. Okay. Coffee, chocolate, almond. What a delight. Oh my gosh. Everybody's got to get on this Biscotti train because choo-choo, we're taking off. Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.